All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the West Allis Milwaukee School Board to order. Mr. Sikich, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Suzette, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Burns,
Here.
Mr. Becker,
Here.
Mrs. Kaiser. Here. Mr. Keller.
Here.
And Ms. Steele. Here. Mrs. Carr. Here. Mr. Sikich.
Present.
Mrs. Lee. Here. President Lee.
Here. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Do we have any modifications to the agenda this evening?
There are no modifications.
All right, we'll move right into the superintendent's report.
Good evening. So I have a couple of legislative updates. Governor Evers vetoes bills targeting trans and gender nonconforming kids. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers has vetoed Assembly Bill 377, a bill that targets transgender and gender nonconforming youth and prohibits them from participating in school athletic teams. So again, that's a veto by Governor Evers. Governor Evers did sign bills requiring Hmong and Asian American instruction in K-12 schools. The new law requires school boards to provide instruction on Hmong and Asian Americans as part of already required instruction on human relations in certain demographic groups. Referendum results for April 2nd election, specifically around district referendums. So results indicate that 56 of the 93 school referendums were approved by voters. This is a passage rate of just over 60%. The governor vetoes several education related bills, including competitive bidding mandates. So Governor Evers vetoed Senate Bill 335 and Assembly Bill 342 relating to allowing school boards to employ a district administrator who was not licensed by DPI. Specifically, there was an effort in this bill to have superintendents to have more business background, not necessarily educational superintendent licensing. This is specifically what that particular bill would have allowed. Senate Bill 489 and Assembly Bill 510 relating to rights reserved to a parent or guardian of a child. There were a number of bills that were vetoed by Governor Evers on last week. Music department, we're proud to announce that our district's music program has been honored with the Best Communities for Music Education designation from the National Association of Music Merchants Foundation for its outstanding commitment to music education. This year, 975 school districts were recognized across the country, with the West Allis West Milwaukee School District being one of 37 in the state of Wisconsin to receive this honor. This is the 10th time that our music program has received national recognition from the NAMM Foundation. Now in its 25th year, the Best Communities for Music Education designation is awarded to districts that demonstrate outstanding achievements and efforts to provide music access and education to all students. So along these lines, I want to say again, congratulations to all of our music teachers, our students in our district. But specifically, I want to urge everyone to continue to support the Marty Lexman Foundation Scholarship. And specifically, the effort is around increasing opportunities for students to engage in the music in an instrument. And so this award, along with our efforts to definitely support the things that we're doing in our district and trying to give every single kid an opportunity to play a musical instrument. This is what's beautiful and what's wonderful about our district. When I attend the various events, to see all of those students involved in the arts is definitely a sight to see. 2024 Herb Cole Educational Award winners. I want to say congratulations to Stacy Montoya from Irving Elementary School and Catherine Johnson from West Allis Central High School on being selected as 2024 Herb Cole Education Award winners. Stacy was selected as a Herb Cole Educational Foundation Fellow, and Catherine was awarded as a 2024 Herb Cole Student Initiative Scholarship. Thank you for embodying excellence in education and for representing our district. That is major. Our March Educators of the Month, we have a short video. I just want to Recognize before the video plays, Ms. Tessa Smith from Hart Man and Samantha Garasi from Irving Elementary School. Stop playing?
No, they're not here.
Okay.
Where is Gerasi at? Oh, how are you doing? Look, I know you in the action. So let me tell you that I received so many compliments and some great words about the work that you're doing on behalf of our students. And so I just want to first say thank you for the work that you're doing and congratulate you for being the educator of the month for the West Dallas West Milwaukee School District.
Right here in front of you.
How you doing? What's your name? Tessa Smith.
Yes.
Congratulations. You've been awarded the Educator of the Month. The work that you did to have these kids, they said your hard work, your patience, and you have a knack for doing what needs to be done so you have these kids. So just want to say again, congratulations. All right. So proud of you. Thank you. Thank you.
In both instances, they were in the work, so it's good to see. Unfortunately, I don't believe either were able to join us tonight, but I will present their awards at their schools on this week. I do want to close out my particular section by just reminding everyone that we are having our first spring engagement session on April 16th at West Milwaukee Intermediate School from 6 to 7 p.m. The address is 5104 West Greenfield Avenue, and it will take place in the auditorium. I want to invite everyone to come out, become informed and engage in a conversation as to how we can improve our district. And so again, this engagement session is for to solicit feedback and also to give you as much information as you need so you can make an informed decision. And that's going to conclude the superintendent's report for tonight.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to item 7, our public comments for this evening. If there are people here in the audience who have not signed up already, there is a tablet at the back of the room to sign up to provide public comments. If you are listening via Zoom and like to address the board, should be a link in the chat for you to fill that form out and do so. For those who are addressing the board this evening, you'll have 3 minutes to do so. Please start out by stating your name and your address. And then you'll have 3 minutes to provide your comments. There won't be any back and forth conversation. However, if there are any simple questions or comments that we can't address at the time, we will right away. If there's an official response required, that will happen by the next regular Board of Education meeting. All right, with that, we have our first person up, Elizabeth Stein.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Stein. I live at 2754 South 111th Street. I have three kids in our district, one at Hoover in first grade, one at Walker in third grade, and one at FLW in sixth grade. My son did an inter-district transfer last year from Hoover to Walker because it was deemed to be a better learning environment for him. He has for the most part thrived this year, and we are grateful for the change was made. However, while he has thrived in his new school, our family has struggled because we are balancing 3 different schools with 3 different students, 2 of which are very young, meaning they have a lot more school events during the year. My son was not able to participate at any events at Hoover this year, and my daughter is able to come to Walker so we can participate as a family. However, she knows very few people and definitely feels out of place as it is not her school. Therefore, our family made the hard decision to petition to move our daughter to Walker for the upcoming year via interdistrict transfer so that she could complete her schooling with her brother in a more traditional way. Sadly, because we did not meet the very strict guidelines for an interdistrict transfer, our request was denied. I am here today to ask you to revisit those guidelines. There are many viable reasons for a family would need to participate in an interdistrict transfer, which are addressed in the current guidelines. However, the guidelines do not allow for transfers to be done as a family. They only allow the one child who is affected to transfer, putting a lot of undue burden on families. Right now, I have to balance getting 2 kids to and from school at the same time, meaning if my husband is not home, one child is always late or early. More importantly, it is very difficult to feel part of both communities and be present for both schools' events. This Friday alone, we will again have to divide and conquer as one school has a family movie night and the other school has a spring fling. This has happened several times throughout the school year with concerts, dances, events. We would rather do these things as a family, but are forced to do them separately so that both kids can participate in their school events. As a member of both PTAs, I can tell you what I'm sure you already know, which is that parent involvement in our district has diminished significantly since COVID. Policies that separate families make it even harder for those families to be involved in both schools. I am asking that you reevaluate the interdistrict transfer policy to allow families to have students who have to transfer to both schools within the district move as a family unit so that their entire family can be part of the school community, eliminating the need to do events that are supposed to be geared towards families separately. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, Debbie Marin.
Okay. Hi, I'm Debbie Moran. My address is 2345 South 75th Street. And I'm here to talk about human growth and development. And I was on the advisory committee, and I have been in the past. And I was on this current advisory committee, and it was very interesting. It's been a while since my kids have been in the district. All 4 of my kids have gone through all of their education in the West Dallas, West Milwaukee schools. All of them started in elementary and graduated from, I think all of them graduated from Central. Yep, from Central. So I found the process very interesting, and I'm sure it's routine to educators on how decisions get made and how you set up curriculum. But it was interesting to a layperson to try to figure out how it all worked. There was really good dialogue, and our meetings were, and that asking us for input was really well run by Adam Hengel. So I found that very, very worthwhile. But there are several issues to the board, since you're making the policy, that I'd like to have you consider. I know there was some discussion. I watched your workshop too. So there was some discussion about the opt-out versus opt-in. And I know Adam had mentioned that too. And I'd be curious to know what districts have the opt-in approach. We have opt-out. So I would like to see, the decision making on that and see if that might be something we could look at. And then I was really interested in the difference between sexuality, sex, biological versus gender, social, and how that's going to impact human growth and development instruction. So we're talking about biological actions or activities. And so I don't know how gender plays in that role, but I think it needs to be defined if and when the district will address the gender issues. And then if you do, you need to stay up to date on the research. I've just been seeing lately, there's a 15-year study out of the Netherlands emphasizing the normalcy of questioning one's gender identity during adolescence. And this study highlighted that gender non-contentedness tends to decrease with age. So that's kind of a warning before the hormone replacement and surgical drastic measures are pursued and kind of put down that path. So schools will have not that they're going to do the hormone replacement or the surgery, but they can start a student down that path. And if there's some warning that that's not a good direction to go, I'd really like the latest information on that. There was a Mayo Clinic study that just came out on the 27th of March, raising concerns over irreversible harm and possible cancer link with puberty blockers for the boys. So, I mean, this stuff is coming out fast and furious. So, am I done?
Yeah, thank you.
Wow. Okay, well, I just like to finish up quickly because these were just for by introduction. I'd like the school district to consider it's time now to move to a sexual risk avoidance as opposed to sexual risk reduction. And there's all that data I'm talking about and research. It's new and we need to look at that as the way we conduct. And I think you need to have an advisory committee for your 10th grade human growth and development according to the statutes, as far as I can tell. And I'm understanding that the 10th grade, there's not going to be a advisory committee, which is against the law.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, there was no one else that signed up for public comments this evening, so we're closed public comments at this time. Move on to item 8, our board reports. Starting with 8.1, our review of our board calendar this evening. So today is Monday, April 8th. We have a regular Board of Education meeting. And we also have a financial stability and efficiency workshop on the proposed 24-25 budget and preliminary tax levy number 1. Then on Monday, April 15th at 6 p.m., we have our school showcases. 6 school showcases will be happening next Monday. And then on Monday, April 22nd at 6 p.m., we have our regular Board of Education meeting where our newly elected board members take their oaths of office. And then we have 3 college and career readiness workshops, 1 on student voice projects and demonstrations, 1 on student representatives on our board, and 1 on special education programs. Moving on to 8.2, our board committee reports this evening. We have 8.2.1, we have college and career readiness. Ms. Carr.
Thank you. Life Readiness met tonight at 5 o'clock, and we had several items on the agenda. Science adoption for elementary was the first. Adam Hengel provided a timeline for the science resource adoption for elementary. The committee started in the summer looking at other districts' resources. They received evaluation samples, and they knew that they wanted flexible and inquiry-based lessons, so that helped narrow down things. The 2 resources being piloted at this time are the McGraw-Hill Inspire and Mystery Science. Both resources will have a cost, and both will need some consumables. There will be a workshop for the board on May 13th, so you can stay tuned for all of the details from that committee. The next on our agenda was the technology plan preview. Kevin Clark and Adam Hengel presented the timeline for this tech plan. The committee started the summer of 2023, and they started with goal setting and continued with goal setting. We've had goals for years. They sent out a needs assessment, and they had staff create a wish list, and then took all of that data and they'll have goals that are in 4 categories that align with our strategic plan pillars. And there was talk about some streamlining the tech support. Stay tuned for that. We need to have more discussion on that. And they talked about 50% of all the classrooms will have what's called new line panels, which is basically a 75-inch touchscreen with a computer built into it. And then, and that will be used by staff and students. And then the other 50% will be installed at a future date with hopes of 100% installed within the next 2 years. Next on the agenda was academic career plan. Steve Carr gave us a committee, gave the committee a condensed version of the academic career plan. That is, the thing that was new to me was it's now required by the state to have. And it focuses on 6 through 12, but Steve pointed out that there will be other things throughout elementary that will be added in at that lower level to get kids ready. And we're going to receive all the details during the workshop. And that is it for my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carr. Does anyone have any questions regarding her report? Or any questions to be considered at a future agenda for her committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Carr.
Mhm.
Moving on to 8.2.2, communications and community relations, Ms. Deal.
All right, our committee met on March 25th. So we basically, everything is about right now talking about the referendum. So right now there's a spreadsheet has been created with all the upcoming major events happening in our district. So referendum sessions, intermediate preview nights, docu exhibit night, graduations, etc. Directors and managers are encouraged to add additional events to the spreadsheet. There's also a spot on the spreadsheet for directors and managers to sign up to be there at these events to talk with community members about the referendum. And then all of the principals, all the schools will be receiving or probably have received it already, a referendum toolkit. These kits include a large poster advertising the referendum and handouts in both English and Spanish. They're also going to be adding stickers to the toolkit once the design is decided on. Principals will be able to put this information on display in the school office and at school events at their discretion. And that is my report.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Steele. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Steele regarding her report? Or any items to consider at future agendas? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Steele. Moving on to 8.3, board member reports and community events. I know we did have spring break that we were just at, but is there any community events anyone attended they would like to report on? I'm sure we'll have plenty coming up here now in a second. We're in the home stretch, as you say, of the school year, as we're past all of our big breaks. So we'll have lots of things to report on at the next meeting. So 8.4, other updates and information items. From my perspective, I just want to echo Dr. Robinson's encouragement to attend our sessions, referendum information sessions that are coming up. The surveys I know have been hitting people's mailboxes. So these surveys are going out to every single community member within our district. So if you have not received a survey, please reach out to us. You have an option to either fill it out on paper or electronically. And this is really important to provide us the feedback that we need to get the information we need as we move forward with this referendum question. So please do fill out the survey. And also, please do attend the referendum information sessions that we have coming up. The one at West Milwaukee, just want to note for those who may not be aware, Greenfield Avenue is torn up right now in front of West Milwaukee. So just plan accordingly when traveling. I think parking is definitely restricted at that point, and it might be hard to travel down Greenfield Avenue when coming for that meeting. That's all I had to say on that. So we'll move on to our consent agenda. So we have 9.1, approval of our regular Board of Education meetings from March 25th. 9.2, our employment summary, and 9.3, our supplementary contracts. If anyone does anything separated out, I'd look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
And second, any last minute discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. All right, so move right into our financial stability and efficiency workshop this evening for our proposed 24-25 budget and preliminary tax levy number 1. Mr. Norris, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. We're just gonna get some IT setups here. Okay. Yeah, all right, we're good to go. Sorry about that. All right, so thank you this evening for having me. This is the prelim tax levy number 1 for 24-25 is an annual item we go through every year. It's part of a budget calendar that's board approved. We typically start in early September, October with the pupil count leading us to January open enrollment and then leading us to a staffing and projected enrollment count in February, which gets us here in April to the first crack kind of at the prelim tax levy budget. I do want to take a minute and pause before we jump into the presentation, which is short. I assured Kristen that tonight it would be short. I think it's a good point to pause. And I say that intentionally, given kind of the votes that took place in early April with the referendums across the state, breaking the record across the country or across the state of Wisconsin. And I say that intentionally because everyone here has lived through the past decade of this meeting being about how to get to even. And we are no longer in a place where we're discussing how to get to zero. How do you climb out of a deficit? That's been the work of our team, the administration, the board, certainly our teachers association, of how do we get to even? And I say that because it's simply fascinating to me that us having this discussion tonight is not about that. When the neighboring districts across the state are having that same discussion we've been having for 10 years there. And so it's important for people to hear tonight that we are not in that place and we do have needs, even though we are being financially responsible. So tonight, I'm hoping the first half of the presentation is about advocacy, about learning about why our schools underfunded and how does that impact schools across the state, not just here. So with that, WASBO recently put out a 3-minute video, which I think like best goes through in 3 minutes how schools are funded, because that's the fundamental reason of why these discussions are happening, not just here, but across the state. So I think if you would just take a look at this and
Our public schools are the cornerstone of our community. The education and opportunities we provide for students today shape their futures and ours. Schools, like any organization, need money to operate, but in Wisconsin, funding the needs of our schools has been a growing challenge. State policy limits how much school districts can spend. The vast majority of school funding comes from a combination of state dollars and local property taxes. It's called the revenue limit, and it acts as a cap per student that school districts can spend each year. Even if school costs go above this level, schools can't spend any more than this limit. From 1994 to 2009, these revenue caps were adjusted for inflation, which meant they helped schools keep up with ongoing needs. But since 2010, the resources districts need to survive have fallen farther and farther behind the basic costs to operate our schools. By the end of 2025, the revenue limit will have fallen more than $3,300 per student behind inflation. With a district of 1,000 students, that's a decrease of more than $3 million. What's more, each district has a different revenue cap, and these caps are not tied to the needs of the students or the costs to the schools that serve them. Our job as a school district is to make sure all of our students have access to the exceptional educational opportunities we provide, no matter what their needs when they walk through our doors. But state funding falls short of what it costs to meet the specific needs of many of our students. When that happens, we have to use money from our general fund to cover the difference, which means taking dollars from other important needs. The largest portion of our budget goes towards staffing. Our people are the heart of our schools. Without enough educators who instruct, support, and inspire learning, schools can't provide the lessons, programs, and opportunities our students deserve. Other important budget items include curriculum, technology, transportation, operations, and maintenance. School districts work hard to balance their budgets, yet resources for schools have been shrinking year after year since 2010. With costs growing so much faster than funding, districts are always looking for ways to trim costs and work smarter, like deferring needed school maintenance, cutting programs, reducing staff, and many other strategies. But schools can only cut so much before they start to harm educational opportunities for their students. To maintain class sizes, keep up with rising costs, take care of school buildings, and protect high-quality instruction, many districts have turned to their community to help fill the state-imposed funding gap. Since the arrival of revenue limits, over 80% of school districts have done so by asking local voters to raise their caps through an operating referendum. Most have used the option multiple times. Our children don't have time to wait for state policymakers to fix the school funding system. By putting the needs of our students first, we are investing in their potential and the future of our whole community. Strong schools make strong communities where families want to move and stay. Learn more about school finance in Wisconsin by visiting our websites.
To me is much better than me trying to explain that in 30 minutes. So that 3-minute video, I think, just encapsulates, I think, like the current issue in school funding in Wisconsin and also kind of what districts are doing in response. And I think it directly connects to what most everyone in this room saw happen 2 weeks ago or last week and with the referendum votes across the state. And I think it's not something that we won't see continue to happen, but I think it's a good thing to keep people informed about. And certainly we'll have this kind of branded for the information that's specific to our district and have it on our website here in the next week or so for anyone that's interested to learn more about and certainly to continue to advocate. So it's noteworthy. We'll just keep moving here through this now. Noteworthy that as we move through this, the prelim budget is just that, it's preliminary. There's things that will change. We know that. I'll talk about what those things typically are later in the presentation. And what I thought was interesting, because I mentioned the comment that for the better part of a decade, we've at this exact meeting been in a different position. I thought I'd go back and kind of show what that looked like. So in 1819, this exact meeting, we were discussing of how we were going to climb out of a roughly $5 million hole. You can kind of go through year by year by year. And I think this is a great way to show the work that's gone on from an operations perspective in conjunction with all the groups that I just mentioned earlier. So certainly happy to be in this position we are today through that work and continue to look forward to the future. So the state budget's an it's biennial budget that's passed every 2 years. We're entering the second year of the biennial budget. So 24-25 brings, I guess, somewhat good news. We'll see an increase in revenue, which is $325 per student, which that was passed. And it's noteworthy that through the governor's line item veto, which is nicknamed the Vanna White veto, the schools across Wisconsin have a guarantee of $325 per year. It's also important to note that that really only is until Governor Reavers is potentially no longer governor, right? So likely for the next biennial budget, the starting point for discussions will be at 325 because it's state law. And then after that, it's kind of unknown. So should Governor Evers decided to run and maintain his governor status, and probably the next two biennial budgets will also, that'll be the starting point. Should he not run or his party lose, I mean, that's up for question. So certainly not something we should bank on, but I think entering the 25-27 biennial budget, certainly something that's where I'll start projecting for next year in a year and a half from now. But certainly good to know. I think the reason I mention that is I hear people say, well, schools got lifetime increases. Well, it's not actually accurate. It's currently accurate. It's literally the strike of a pen can be changed. So just important to note that for anyone watching and certainly everyone in this room. So what does that look like? I think it's important to know, like, what does a 325 per pupil per member increase look like? So this year and next year, it amounts to just under 4% of an increase in revenue. And when you compare that to just CPI alone, right? And staff salaries and benefits make up about 70% of our expenses. When you compare it just to CPI alone, right? CPI last year was 8%, over double what our revenue increase was. And then this year, again, CPI inflation essentially outpaced our increase in revenue. So if you get beyond that, right, into other areas where inflation's outpacing other areas, health insurance, transportation, crossing guards, these are all things we've had discussions with as a board, seeing, you know, I don't want to say astronomical, but 15 to 20% seems nominal. Seems normal, right, as a starting point for some of these conversations, because CPI inflation as a whole across this country ranges as an average there, other industries are seeing larger increases, and those increases are pushed to schools or whoever uses those goods and services. So I think it's important to note, as you saw in the video, school districts, if you go from 2010 until today and you add up every year. So if schools were underfunded by $50 the last 2 years, then this year it's 100. And then this year it's 25. Now it's 125, right? If you add that up over the past 14 years, we are literally $3,308 behind per student. And per year, in 1 year, $3,308 per student leaves us with a net deficit of almost over $20 million as a district. So it is significant, and it's appalling to see. So I'm going to spend a few slides to kind of go through what that looks like across the state, beyond a little bit deeper from the video they showed. So I included this slide, and it doesn't show the whole picture, and I'll explain that in a second. But what's interesting to note is that this is the first year now, having the 22-23 year ended, where you've seen a complete group of students go through the whole school system, 4K all the way to graduating post Act 10. And the reason it's important is because when you look at, that's the first student that was enrolled in schools when the current school funding landscape changed. And this is where, when you start to go through cumulatively, you can kind of see what happened. So in 2009, that was the first year revenue limits were decoupled and started. And 4K, that's when the proficiency through Act 10, the state statutes were changed for proficiency and tests in schools, right, to what we have today. And you can kind of keep going through this, and you can see, you know, the first 2 years we received $200. That actually outpaced inflation, right? Then 2011 is when the Act 10 decrease to schools happened, and you can kind of go through that. And there's a couple of years where the increase from the state was nominal with the increase in inflation. So you can see that those years are not on there because it was a net zero. But over the course of their career in public schools, that's where this over $3,200 comes from. And it's just an interesting thing to think that's been that long, right? It was shocking to me to see that. I hadn't thought about it in that way. So you can see here, this slide kind of takes each of the years in which our school district received less money than inflation, and it multiplies it to add up. Well, how much money in that year did our school district lose, and the difference between what we received versus inflation? So you can see in 2009, 2010, we received more revenue that year. And then you can kind of go through it here to go, well, in 2011, we had a deficit of $8 million versus inflation. And when you add up every year beyond that, you can see it's a total of over $202 million that the school district, in that student's lifetime in the school district, would have lost, the district would have. So you can say, well, how does it impact in 1 year? Well, you can see it here. How does it impact over the lifetime? It's certainly growing. And I can't imagine, you know, what public schools would look like today had this not happened. I can't even imagine what it would look like. $200 million is more than we receive in one budget year. To put that in context, right? So it's certainly astronomical. This is just another visual to show kind of the difference between how schools were funded prior to Act 10, which was indexed to inflation versus today. And the gap obviously continues to grow as we receive increases that do not outpace inflation or stay with it. So then I thought, well, let's look at like, is Wisconsin, like, are we in the middle of every other state when it comes to this? Because if every other state's doing the same thing, well, then maybe that's some of the thinking as to why this is happening, right? So I thought I'd start looking at this. So how does Wisconsin rank in K-12 spending today than it versus 20 years ago? So in 2002, we ranked 11th in the country in spending per in terms of the state of Wisconsin on education. Today, we're 25th, which is 5.2% below the national average. And the main reason that is, I went back to prior to COVID, the main reason that is Wisconsin was one of 2 states in the entire country that when schools got ESSER funding related to COVID, the state legislature said, in lieu of you getting a state increase, we're going to supplement that with ESSER money. So literally 48 states in the country said, you're going to get an increase in the state and you get ESSER money. And we were one of 2 that said no. So like that decrease went from, I think it was 18th to 25th in just 1 year. So, you know, when you look at K-12 spending in Wisconsin, you know, are we alone? No, we are near the bottom now. And that's just a fact. In terms of state aids, again, this is how school districts get supplemented in funding through the equalization aid formula. You saw in the video, the 2 different the cups pouring into one. So property taxes is certainly a portion of the dollars we receive, and the other portion is state aids. For every dollar we receive, 60 cents comes from the state and 40 cents comes from property taxpayers. So you can see from 2003 to today, the state has actually attributed less dollars in purpose revenues, which is equalization aid, to schools versus when they did 20 years ago. And what's astonishing about that is that in 2003, there was much more students accessing public education than today. So the state actually has more money today through property taxes, through sales tax revenue than they did then. And now they're spending much less more money. So that percent should be, you know, 60%. That would be what I would expect, because they're going in opposite directions, and it's not, which is even more of a problem. How does the state of Wisconsin compare to other states in terms of public dollars going to private schools? That was another area, because in the last biennial budget, schools received 3 to 5%, 3 to 4% in revenue increases. Private schools received upwards of 33%. So what did that do? Well, this is exactly what it did. So we are 3rd in the nation in the amount of public dollars going to private K-12 schools. So you talk about a budget's a reflection of your priorities. Certainly it is. In our homes, it's the same way. And this is where currently our state legislature, their priorities lay. Special education funding. So in the state of Wisconsin, which is similar to most states, for every dollar you spend on special education or Fund 27 eligible expense, you receive a reimbursement for that. And in some states, you can receive up to 60 cents for every dollar. In Wisconsin, today, it's 33.3 cents for every dollar. And in the last biennial budget, Governor Evers asked the legislature to increase from 31.7 to 60. And the 60% would have put the state of Wisconsin in the top 10 in the country. And obviously that did not happen. But what I thought was interesting is today we receive less money in reimbursement from the state than we did in 2000. And to me, again, this is another key statistic that shows like this is how you start to go backwards. And with special education needs and student intervention needs on the rise, especially out of a pandemic, it's just disheartening to see that this has not changed when the state had a chance to do that. I'll keep going here. National teacher shortage from the USA Today 2024. So most recently, you can see kind of the larger the blue circle, the more of a shortage you have. Wisconsin is one of the 10, 11 states that has the biggest needs here in terms of shortages, which again, if you kind of go back to the last 5 slides, it's not like a secret how that happens, right? And then how do districts respond? Well, what does that lead to? That leads to last Tuesday. It leads to that. It leads to communities and school districts having to come together to solve the problems that should be solved in Madison. And that's just the truth. And it's just facts, and it shouldn't be, upsetting to anybody, but it's just the facts. And I think part of these meetings should be about what's happening and how does it impact us. And so I just Wanted to spend a few minutes to talk about that tonight. I think it's important for you guys to kind of know and be able to share those out with your groups in the community to know what's happening and kind of why districts are doing these things. So we'll get into our budget now. So as I mentioned before, a prelim budget is certainly a budget that's in flux, and there are things we know. This is a year we know revenue. Next year we will not, right? We'll be in this cycle going, what if this, what if this, what if this, and we'll start to build a projection. But this year we do know. So we know that we're going to have increased revenue from the state, $320 per student. Pending board approval to this evening, we'll have a 5% increase in CPI compensation for all employee groups. Next year, we know that we'll have the compensation model, which includes a $200 retention increase for returning staff and also micro-credentials. Those are projections at this point. It's contingent on people coming back for next year and then also the number of staff that participate in PD opportunities. We've discussed reduction in staff to align with enrollment. That's consistent practice we've had in the past. We're at this point projecting health insurance increases to be about 15%. We won't really know that until about July. So that's something that will be something to share with the board here probably in August when we get those numbers back. At this point, I'm pretty confident we have no dental increase. We're self-insured for dental. And so that's good to hear. Utility costs, they've actually come down a little bit this year. You probably have heating bills in your homes. You can look at this year to past year. Not really sure why that is, but most districts are budgeting 7, even though that we think it might trend to closer to 3. So there's some savings there potentially. In July, we'll know more about that. Currently, both school and department budgets are at 75% this coming year from prior year. And then it includes some contracted service reductions. And then the budget is built upon a membership reduction of 75 students, which is projected. Those numbers come out again in the September pupil count. And then I just made a note that the CPI increase is pending board approval. So what does that leave us? That leaves us about $39,000 in the red. So certainly, again, going back to my third slide here, that leaves us in a much better position than in past years. So if we could overcome that, I'm 100% sure we can overcome this. So very much appreciate your guys' work on that. Opportunities to balance, certainly of staffing committees that we review kind of staffing needs as we go through schools, maybe the principals. That's certainly not going to be an issue this year, given the deficit we're in. $38,000 is nothing to scrutinize over. So when we come to June, prior to the fiscal year turning, we will have a balanced budget for you guys to review and hopefully approve. So mill rate tax levy, we'll talk about that now. So the projected mill rate, there's 2 different scenarios I have here. One is if an equalized property value does not increase at all, which is definitely not going to happen. The reason I show this is that the mill rate and the tax levy are only connected to each other if the equalized property value is 0. And so what I'm saying here tonight is our reduction in membership with no equalized property value increase shows a mill rate reduction. That means the tax levy will go down next year. Okay. Now we don't ever see an equalized property value decrease or 0. So what is it going to actually look like? The projections currently are that equalized property in the West Allis, West Milwaukee School District across all municipalities will increase an aggregate of 6%. So given that we are looking at a tax levy decrease next year, the property taxpayers should project about a 5 to 7% decrease in the mill rate next year. That's what we're projecting at this point based upon state aids. A lot of that is because state aids, they increased the bucket for 24-25. So some of that's attributed to that, but the other portion is that we'll have a total revenue limit decrease as well, right? Which impacts property taxpayers as well. So it's good news. How does it impact a property taxpayer? For every $100,000 of value, $620 would be the school-based portion of their property tax payment. Other district priorities. So we are currently in the midst of a food service RFP. I included that in my board update for you guys to review. So we are working through that. Our committee met today for the first time. We have about 14 people on the committee. Very excited about that. We have a student from Central and Hale, and then we have literally an individual from every employee group across the district, essentially. Teachers, we have administrators, we have lay staff, everybody. So we made a site visit today to Hale to physically try the food, and we're going to, I believe, Pewaukee High School tomorrow to try theirs, different vendor, and then we'll be at Brown Deer High School on Thursday to do the same. And then look for board approval here in the next few weeks, likely in May, around what the recommendation is to you guys. So that's coming up. But you can see here, we continue to try to find ways to spend Fund 50 surplus dollars. So we if you can go back a few years, this is year 3 of offering free lunch and breakfast to all students, which I think is the most noble thing we can do as citizens for kids, is do that. And we've done that. And that was to spend down our fund balance in Fund 50, which is very restricted and it can only be for food service eligible expenses. So we've been doing that. We've been working with DPI on eligible expenses for what costs go into food service. Well, certainly the cleaning up of of lunch and breakfast is a cost associated with food service. If you didn't have breakfast and lunch, you wouldn't need someone to clean it up. So last 2 years ago, we attributed the salary and benefit time with cleaning up food service from our custodial staff. That certainly helped. And this year we're looking at also attributing supervision of lunch and breakfast. So that's going to be staff and elementaries likely, and more administrative and the youth advisors time, which will also help. But again, that includes this, and we're still projecting just barely a deficit-based budget this year for food service. So, $50,000 will eat into that, but not at the pace that we're expected to. Per DPI, we're only supposed to have 3 months of carrying costs in a fund balance. And as long as we have a plan to try to tackle that, we're also looking at metering out the kitchens this summer. So that'll also help too, to attribute actual gas, electricity, and water costs for food service, and then pay that bill separately out of Fund 50. So we're doing what we can. This whole deck will get reshuffled with a new vendor or Sodexo, whoever. The new costs will come, and we'll have to look through that too. But that's food service. Fund 80, certainly we've been working on the lane recreation project. So that's something that's a big, I believe that'll start here in the next few months. So I have to check with Shelley on that, but that's kind of the Fund 80 recreation levy history. Facility updates. So there's some obviously plans for facility improvements for next year. So a couple of the highlights, we're looking at upgrading bathrooms at Nathan Hale, the athletic bathrooms near the gym, and the WAC, the bathrooms there. We have a music room upgrade at Frank Lloyd Wright. There's some storage in the music and orchestra room. Certainly Mary Pat could speak to this better than I can, but there's upgrades and needs there that we're looking to do, including new flooring for the students at FLW. Docky and Hale have planned roofing needs on top of the roofing need at Hale. So working on getting an update to that. So more to come there with the ongoing issues we had there. Pool upgrades, and then some other consistent things that we have every year that come up. That's from a facilities perspective. Fund 46, you can kind of see some of the projects that we've finished this year and what's coming up next year. Certainly our fund balance, obviously working at spending some of those dollars. So you can see here, looking at projected balance, just over $9 million in the fund balance for 46. And then Fund 49 is our other capital improvement fund. You can see the fund balance for 23-24 began at $8 million, and it's just under 6 now. And the main reason that is due to the 93rd Street renovation, which that's from the sale of this building. So other priorities, my last slide here is just we're working through next year pending obviously the referendum, a compensation model redevelopment, the technology refresh will be coming, as I think Jane mentioned in her update, for board approval, and then from leadership and learning, some early literacy, professional development, supplemental materials to support early literacy development and intervention materials, and then a 6-12 math curriculum review and resource adoption next year. So, and I think, yeah, that's it. That's all I have. So I would, I guess, pause there prior to the agenda for questions.
Questions from the board?
I'm thrilled we're at 39,000. That's when I started, I think we were at like 3 or 4 million always under, and we would approve it. It's like, this is a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication and a lot of stuff, but it's great work.
Yeah.
For you guys.
Thank you.
Other questions? I just have one. So the current budget includes 75% building budgets. That's compared to this year's budget. So it's basically the same budget from this year to next year.
Yeah, so good question. So every year building budgets go back to 0, 100%. And then what happens is it's based on their January prior enrollment. And then what we do is take their January prior enrollment, we multiply it out to be 100% and then reduce it down to 75%. That's the school budgets. Department budgets, what you just said is correct. The current budget at 75% for next year.
Okay.
You see the difference? So they're different calculations. And the reason that is because if we ran the schools that way every year, they'd be like, from today, 5 years from now, their budgets would be a third of what they are.
Right.
So it's easy. It's better for them to do it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
I know we had some discussions about the funds and how we distribute them according to need. So in we know that some of our school buildings have a higher free reduced lunch population compared to others. And so we talked about, I know we've discussed in the past about title funds and how those are distributed more to those schools that have a higher need. But when we talk about department budgets and building budgets, beyond the title funds, is there any other increase given to the buildings that have a higher free reduce? As we know, the needs of those buildings tend to be higher.
Sure.
Staffing needs as well as maybe other supports that those
Sure.
students require.
Sure. Yeah, so the two main areas where schools specifically get more funding in terms of like based on their free and reduced percentage is title, as you mentioned, and the other one's AGR. So those are two functions through the state and federal government where schools can get more dollars that are attributed based upon that school's free and reduced population. And those dollars, which are allocated to the district to deploy to those schools, can be used really for funding or to meet the needs of the grant. So AGR is a grant, so we have to apply kind of a budget to what that would look like. So our current model is 50% coaching, 50% staffing for classrooms. So that's the main purposes at this point, how we fund schools based on free and reduced. Outside of we don't have a certain calculation, the building budgets for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I think that'd be good to see something like that.
Sure.
Some sort of a multiplier, if you will, that when you calculate everyone's budget, maybe based on the free and reduced, there's a multiplier provided to each school based on how many free and reduced students that they have.
Sure.
So that and then the building would have the flexibility to then use those funds as they deemed fit to be able to help support their school community. I know that budgets are tight and that adds a complication to it, but when we talk about equity, like that's how I see trying to be able to do that equitably.
Yeah.
Because I know with title funds and things like that, we end up like providing staffing dollars for those from a lot of those title funds and maybe some support dollars. But to me, that's a little bit different than saying like, we know that this is going to be more difficult because of the needs of your population. And as such, we want to be able to provide you more support for that. So I don't know the details about how that would possibly work out.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that it would be great to like maybe look into so that we can consider something like that as we move through these budgets.
Yeah, I certainly can bring that to committee and we can have a discussion and kind of panel other districts if they have something similar to kind of build off of and bring it to the
But I
board.
do know there are instances right now where we have deeper learning coaches at some schools, specifically because of their population. So we do have efforts already in place. I agree, we need to come up with more of a better plan to identify how those monies are divvied out. But currently that's one of the things I would say is an example of Horace Mann has 2 deeper learning coaches, where every other elementary school, I think except Jefferson, has 1. So
Yeah.
that's an example. They are one of our highest populations of free and reduced lunch.
Right. Oh, yeah. So just want to bring that up.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Norris, for providing us this insight into our preliminary budget and tax levy coming up here. And we will officially take action on those things in June, as you mentioned previously. All right, so now we're moving on to our action items this evening, starting with our 24-25 base wage increase for all employee groups. Did you have a agreeable, Dr. Robinson?
Just ask for approval.
Mr. Norris, I'll turn it over to you then.
Yeah. Yeah, no, as Dr. Robinson said, we're seeking your approval. We thought it'd be most appropriate to kind of talk through the budget and tax levy projections for next year for you guys to see that prior to asking for approval for base wage increase for employees. I just would note that this is the earliest we've ever asked for this to happen. I think it's coming off of the staffings we've had in schools around compensation, what your future looks like. I think given kind of where the market's going, the earliest we can get this out here to staff to kind of let them know what we're trying to do, what our efforts are, that we're really doing our best while being fiscally responsible to keep people from looking. I mean, it's the perfect thing we've been trying to do, which is employee retention. So I appreciate your guys' support and as Dr. Robinson said, look for your approval on that.
Questions from the board? I only have one. Because it might come up in the referendum session. So we talked about one of the things we're doing is operational referendum. We're talking about trying to get our staff to the middle.
Sure.
How does this affect that? I mean, we don't know what other districts are going to do, right? But say other districts did nothing and we give everyone 5%. Other districts aren't going to do nothing.
Right.
But where would that, we're second from the last right now in our area.
Sure.
So would that move us to the middle? Would that move us to like top, lower 25%?
Mhm.
I just think it's a good
Sure.
thing to talk about because this is the comparator, right? This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to say we want staff to stay. The biggest reason they're leaving is because of money.
Yeah.
So how can we keep them? Well, we're doing 5%. That's what we can do. But we
Right.
need to do a lot more to be able to keep that retention.
It's a good question, and the answer, I don't mean to complicate it because I'm not trying to, but it is complicated because you got to go a little bit deeper than an inch. So if all districts around us gave 4.12, you go, we did 5, we did 0.88 better. But it's not that simple. If any district's already 6% above us, do 4.12 on 60 grand versus 5% on 55.
Mhm.
The person that makes 60 at 4 is actually going to get a little more chunk in it, right? So you have to then dig into like, well, who gave 4.12? What percent are they above us, and rerun the number, which we will do prior to obviously next fall in the referendum campaign. But from what I have seen, there's not like, this isn't like board approved in every district, but the conversations going on is most districts are looking between 3.5 and the 4.12. I'm guessing the aggregate average will be about 4. That's my guess. I've been shocked before. I think Tosa shocked us all last year. Stuff like that probably will happen again, but hard to say at this point. This is pretty early for those conversations, but they are happening. So.
I'll just add, we're in an excellent position as far as, getting things out early. But I think that your question brings up a point that Aaron mentioned earlier about the compensation model. That there's a lot of work that has to be done. And we're looking for, success in November. And part of that success will definitely we will have to work with that compensation plan to make sure that we do what's right by our people, bottom line. And so part of that is making sure that we have a plan that's equitable. Yeah.
Thank you. That's the point that I was hoping to make. So,
Yeah.
thank you. Mr. Burns.
I had one question about this. Well, I certainly like the idea of the 5%, by us going up above and beyond where like other districts are talking right now. Is that going to impact our ability to put in additional staff, support staff, other things that might help make our teachers' lives easier beyond the pay, since we are also with our referendum talking about salary?
I mean, I think the honest answer to that is yeah, but I think if the truth is, I think they'd take the 5 over the 4.12. And I don't think it's felt across that, but I mean, for every 1%, it's $500,000. So you're probably looking at 400 grand that's coming from somewhere, right? It's just the truth. So, is that going to be felt across all schools equitably? Probably not, but of 8.88 more is felt equitably across all employees. So I think that's been the focus. And I think should November be successful, we're certainly not going to be in this position to, we'll look at it again. And if we're regionally competitive, we likely would have a different answer for you today. But given we're not,
If I
that's
could add too,
Sure.
we've been doing a lot of work behind what's going on. I'm not prepared to really talk about some of those things. My big ask of Aaron, but as an example, we're looking at EAs for our 4K classes. So we would have sort of like one per elementary school. That's an example of the supports that you're talking about. To provide, our 4K teachers with that. Those kids are coming in. I participated in one of the classes at Irving, and I just looked at the teacher and said, I don't know how you do this every day.
Yeah.
And so going back to with Aaron, I say, Aaron, we got to do this. So that's been an ask of mine.
Mhm.
And we're trying to look at the budget and make sure that can happen. Again, it's an ask.
Yeah.
We're not sure quite how the money's going to flesh out, but that's hopefully something we'll be able to get done.
Yeah. And it's not like something that people live with today is gone tomorrow. It's not like that. That's what you're maybe more you're asking, Brennan. If that is the case, then no. But the money does come from somewhere. So that's
Thank you.
Any other questions, or was I looking for a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any last minute discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank
you,
very
guys.
much, Mr. Norris.
thank you.
Move on to 11.2, our Start College Now applicants. Mr. Carr, I believe, is here.
Oh.
Thanks again for having me. I do realize that there's a basketball game that's going to tip up here in a couple minutes, so I'm going to try to make this brief. This is a wonderful opportunity every semester to present to you the names of the students who have before March 1st submitted their applications to attend technical college while still here in our high school system. So I presented you with the list of those students who met the qualifications. Their studentship is worthy of us giving them the opportunity to go to MATC, WCTC, or Gateway. And I hope that you will accept them, and so that we can get them into that system of registration and enrollment starting in the fall.
Questions from the board? Look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes. Move right on to 11.3, early college credits applicants.
Similar situation, early college credit program is for students who are going into the four-year college and university system. Also, the one of the unique factors is the students who are going through the ECCP process, early college credit program. We have a student who applied for the summer session as well, and that is it's certainly okay in that framework. So we have a similar situation where we have students who have met all the qualifications. Their studentship is worthy of us justifying them heading into the school university environment next fall and summer for one of them. And I'm hoping you'll accept their proposal so we can get them moving into their enrollment process.
Any questions from the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Carr.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to 11.4, gifted and talented program approval.
All right, good evening. We're gonna grab one more chair. Let's see how this looks. This looks interesting.
All right, I guess Dr. Robinson is going to start us off.
So this is a continuation from our previous presentation. And it's going to be sort of a follow-up in a sense of, you gave us some homework, you gave us things we needed to work on, and this is kind of what we came back with. And so I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa and her team, and we'll get through this. All right.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again. I'm excited to be joined here with Dr. Grease and Kim Kleik, who have spent a lot of time over this past year re-envisioning what our gifted and talented programming will look like to serve the needs of our students and families. And so what you were all given this past weekend was the Gifted and Talented Program Plan, which is the complete plan. Here are all the different aspects of it. There was rich discussion during the workshop, so I think we're very familiar with the plan. But I'm going to let Kim and Becky speak to just some of the changes based on feedback from you all. And so if you could, sure.
Okay. So I think one of the big pieces from your feedback that we want to make sure that we're including within our plan is that professional development piece. And so we will be having a lot of training around depth and complexity, and that will be sort of where our professional development goes moving into next year, starting with a meeting in March, and then looking for some teacher leaders at each building that will attend this training, as well as some summer training this summer. So we will have a 2-day training this summer at 2 different opportunities for teachers to attend that training, along with Kim and myself, to just make sure that we are setting our teachers up for success as we're implementing this new program plan. And then the other piece is just making sure that on our website, we have a clear pathway for families to get the information where the program plan will live, as well as an FAQ section that kind of has all those questions that you're sort of asking us to kind of put those out there, as well as other questions that we're getting from families to make that apparent and forward facing for them.
And then along with the program plan tonight is also a proposed gifted and talented board policy that we also shared with you all previously. And this is just an important piece in alignment with the program plan to have this updated, as well as we'll have this brought into our policy, as well as a policy around student acceleration. Those are both things that are via DPI highly recommended to be part of this program approval. So again, as these changes, we have these here based on your feedback, but we also know, like, as soon as we get approval, we're going to be moving and getting this into our schools as soon as possible. So some of that learning and sharing around what the program plan is and whatnot will all happen this spring. So then we can identify our teacher leaders that are going to be kind of guiding the gifted and talented work within the school building alongside the leadership teams. So what questions do you all have?
Questions? Ms. Carr.
Yeah, go ahead, Jane.
Just a comment, thanking you for listening and making some of those changes. I think I feel more comfortable with the plan now.
Thank you, Ms. Carr.
Other questions? So is the plan, once approved, to start identifying students right away? And then communication be going out to families if their student is identified, as well as if they want to have their student identified? You know, if the process that we talked about.
Absolutely. So all of those, yes, to all of those, right? So our next steps will be getting this information out on our website and making sure everyone is aware of this new program plan, as well as getting schools and teachers and leaders all up to speed. So that's like the work of this next month. We, as you know, in the program plan, we already have students who are identified as gifted and talented. And then the identification continues on an ongoing basis. So we will be entering, I know we're in testing season right now with forward and pre-ACT and ACT. We will also have our end of year testing, and that's another opportunity where we look at that data to again start identifying students that maybe we've missed. And then there's always the option for families to fill out or complete a form, as well as teachers for students that, you know, maybe we're not seeing their giftedness come through in the test scores, but maybe they're gifted in leadership or in other areas. Kim, is there anything you want to add to that?
I think you're good.
Good? Okay. They've taught me a lot, so all credit goes to this team.
And then my other question was about the policy. It was a little shorter than I expected, considering the girth of the document that is what is used to basically run through the nuts and bolts of how this program works. So at the very least, I think that document should be linked in the policy, so that if someone is like, oh, what is the policy on gifted and talented? Oh, here's the giant document that actually lays everything out. Because to me, this is the policy here, the language is very minimal.
Mhm.
It doesn't really tell you a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot longer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Through the guidance of Savion, he told us to take certain things out to sort of norm it with the other districts. So.
And Neola looked at this?
Yes, yep.
Okay. So, but I think we should link the document to the policy so
Okay.
that if people look to this policy, they can see that it's not just this paragraph, it's a long piece
Comprehensive
of
program
stuff
plan.
that can be considered and is considered. So that people know what to look for, right? Like if this is a new thing, we might have a lot of people interested in it from a community standpoint. And so I think it'd be good to have that document readily attached to it.
Yeah.
Since and the only reason I'm bringing this up is because we're approving this policy. And so essentially what I'm asking for is approval with that link added to it. That's what I would be looking for from the
Okay.
board.
And we can bring that to Savion and Neola. We're meeting with them briefly soon. So yes. In program plan policy.
And I just have to. So I'm just questioning, I just need to hear one more time about why we changed the name to just Gifted and Talented, because I feel like we've done a really good job as a district of saying, hey, let's broaden what is gifted and think about all of the things that we're looking at, music and art that is creative. And I really relish that creative being in there. And I know you said, well, we just want to be with the norm of what everyone else is calling it. Is that true? Because I would just say that I think that it's important to have that word. It's just my comment on it.
So can I'll
Yeah.
comment.
Okay.
I would say yes. Part of the reason that the C has been removed is to align with DPI.
Right.
Okay, that's a huge part of it. But I would also tell you that the creative side of it has not gone away. It's
I know,
still still a part of it.
I feel
That
like-
hasn't been diminished. I think that's the part I want.
I totally agree with you. And again, I'm gonna be fine with the name, but I just feel compelled to say that I took a lot of pride in that word. And it kind of diminishes it through taking it out, even though we know it's in. So I don't know.
I think I just also want to add one of the other things. So yes, we're aligning with DPI in that title, right? But when I look now at all those areas of giftedness and some of those areas that involve the creativity or the arts and the music, we weren't identifying students necessarily in those areas. We didn't have the protocols in place that are now within the program plan. So I think with our program plan, the way that it's laid out in all of those areas with the specific ways that we are going to identify students, that is what is going to allow that piece that you're saying, like that creative piece, to still be a part of us.
Okay.
Move to approve
As amended.
as amended.
Second. As amended.
All right, motion and second. Any last minute discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you very much for all of your work on this.
you.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
we're very much looking
you.
forward to seeing it
You
implemented.
ladies.
Yes.
All right, so that moves us to 11.5. Human Growth and Development Program approval. Mr. Raj and Mr. Hengel.
So I'll start us off. This is a continuation of our meeting last month where we kind of laid out some of the changes and updates to human growth and development plan for the district. Just in the meantime, as you know, in the interim, last time we met, I kind of did some research and looked at sort of the purposes of school-based sex education. So school-based sex education plays a vital role in the sexual health and well-being of young people. I think all of us have gone through education in various levels and have been exposed to curriculum and things that, you know, we would say were benefits to us. In this particular study that I looked at, it's entitled 3 Decades of Research, the Case of Comprehensive Sex Education. The results were outcomes include appreciation of sexual diversity, dating and intimate partner violence prevention, development of healthy relationships, prevention of sexual abuse, child sexual abuse, improved social emotional learning, and increased media literacy. Substantial evidence supports sex education beginning in elementary school that is scaffolding and of longer duration. And so as the kids get older, things get a little bit more in-depth and more information is shared. And I think that this particular research and article definitely aligned with the direction that we're going with as a district. So I wanted to kind of start by kind of setting the tone for that. And I'll turn it over to Alyssa and Adam at this time.
All right. Thanks for having us tonight. So again, our committee purpose, as our ad hoc committee and our purpose behind kind of the evolution of our programming is really to review our proposed changes. One of them being obviously the addition of 4th grade. We've talked about this a few times and sent out through board updates through 8th grade, human growth and development programming that's delivered, excuse me, to students in the spring of 2024 and then beyond. So our goal, echoing kind of what Dr. Robinson said in the research, is that we're looking for developmentally appropriate fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade instructional programming, including topics. Many of these are guided by state statute, but they're all related to human growth and development in order to provide scientifically accurate information and develop a partnership between school and parent for the purposes of education. Our goal is to provide this content that is developmentally and age appropriate for students according to state and national standard guidance, in addition to addressing knowledge related to human growth and development and specific skills to display healthy behaviors. I want to give a thanks to the hours of time that our committee has met. We kind of were going back and we met 7 times over the last 14 months, each for about 2 hours. Each time is in our group norms. So we had we had teachers on our committee, community members on our committee, parents, healthcare professionals, pastors. So I want to thank all of those people for all of their hard work on this over the last 14 months. So, again, our committee process is we were evaluating current content across grade levels from what we had previously adopted in the probably mid 2010s. And then look at best practices related to human growth and development. So we worked as a committee to build consensus on topics, including delivery of materials. So what we kind of did was we would come up with, we'd build a slideshow. We'd take a look at the slideshow. We'd use the stoplight feedback system. We'd put red, yellow, green dots on things if we could live with it, we couldn't live with it, or if we thought that was really positive moving forward. And then we reviewed each of those grade levels and contents across as a committee, and then kind of build consensus. So the idea that, over 50% of the committee being able to build that consensus and live with things versus having a whole bunch of red dots on our papers as we were moving forward. That was kind of our practice over those 7 times. And so some of our key shifts, and this is also based off of feedback from you all, which I'll get to. And we had another ad hoc committee meeting between our board workshop and tonight. So our key shifts are the delivery of lessons in 4th grade. This is a little bit of a shift as our previous 5th grade was the beginning of our human growth and development programming. So shifting that to 4th grade, increasing content that was delivered across grade levels. Sometimes 5th grade was probably around 25 to 30 minutes with about a 15-minute video on top of that. So really building out some pieces, again, based on feedback that we heard from board members, we added some things around self-esteem and social media and things like that. Building up also too hygiene pieces, inclusivity, creating those communities where everybody feels safe in our classrooms, and then obviously the continuation of abstinence centered. We also use some guidance from the National Sex Education Standards, which is also used by DPI in their work. And then consistent with our own board policies in inclusive language and teaching, which is us in the 5000s, it's a 411.2 rule. And this is where students should experience education around their own gender identity and expression and sexual orientation and identity. So, we've been sending these out as our objectives of this is our goals. Like Dr. Robinson said, we're building on each year, we start with 4th grade, we spiral up a little bit of the 4th grade content into the 5th grade, add new, we bring the 5th grade along with us to 6th grade, add new, 6th to 7th, 7th to 8th. So it's really like a comprehensive kind of spiral that you'll see through those learning objectives.
And so like Adam shared, there was feedback both from you all during our workshop, as well as the ad hoc committee met shortly after to review that feedback and come back with the finalized plan for our students. And so one of those pieces of feedback was around our transgender students. And we want to ensure that anytime we have a student who is transgender, that there's really strong collaboration between the family and our school. And that those students also have access to the curriculum that is aligned to their gender identity that they consistently assert at school and in other social environments. So that's directly connected to our board rule that Adam just referenced, with the ultimate goal is that students feel safe, that they can also learn about themselves and be part of their classroom community.
All right, and also based on our feedback to include success and failure rates for our prevention methods. So we have a number of different prevention methods that are listed in 8th grade. We had things like, I know there were some suggestion around other health impacts around birth control being used for regulating menstrual cycles and like skin care and acne reduction. So we added that in there. And also, so we have both of those pieces in there, and then highlighting methods that do and don't provide protection for STDs and STIs. Essentially, being male and female condoms are really the only prevention method that prevents the transmission of STDs and STIs. So that was added to 8th grade. It is also actually added to 7th grade as well. And then we also, based on feedback in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, we included content on consent. So we talked about, sorry, I'm working off of a different slideshow here. So we talked about that building of a trusting and healthy relationship, what consent means for both people, put that in like 4th, 5th grade, 6th grade friendly language around like if you're playing a game, you're playing, somebody doesn't want to play, you have to respect their decision. If they change their mind later, that's okay too. So making sure that that's acceptable and put that in there based off feedback. You know, it's always okay to say no, things like that. Our next one was the delivery of programming in spring of 2024, but in the future switch to a fall delivery. So this was suggested to our committee. That was pretty, everybody was pretty much on board with that. It makes sense. We're catching 4th graders when they're first coming in versus letting a whole year lapse. So we kind of updated some calendaring for that, and like where our communications will come from the leadership and learning pieces. Some suggestions on 6th, 7th, and 8th grade social media and how that impacts body image, self-esteem. So we added in some pieces around, self-esteem. Like when you're watching a TV show, you're looking at Instagram posts, you're seeing things online, like there's filters applied. Those are not necessarily, you're not seeing the whole story behind some of those. They're made for, for like entertainment and enjoyment, and you're not necessarily seeing the back pieces of that. So we added that in 5th and 6th grade. Also folding that in with the idea that, we're building this inclusive community and that everyone is unique and special in their own way, and everybody brings strengths to our classroom communities. So we kind of folded that around there. And then again, I talked about the health benefits of birth control. And then one of our pieces that we are looking at is for the recommendation of DPI. We are revisiting the high school health curriculum. That's too specific. We're looking at the high school health curriculum to incorporate DPI's relevant programming in their resources. We are looking at specific things in the health programming around tobacco and vaping prevention, building skills for health literacy and nutrition, issues with mental health and suicide prevention, bullying prevention programs, communicable diseases prevention, and dating violence protection. Those are all things that DPI has published and allowed schools to use kind of like an open resource. And that is a direction that our DPI contact for health has kind of steered us to, and then supporting staff on a yearly basis if it's sending people to the WHPE conference and supporting people that way in terms of like new teachings.
And once again, here's our proposed timeline. While the ad hoc committee has been working on this for the past 14 months, have shared this with our College and Career Readiness Committee, you all in workshop, and now we are here on April 8th, looking for your approval to move forward with this programming. And then if approved, then we'll move forward in getting this information out to schools and families this week, as well as the lesson delivery this school year. Questions?
Thank you for really hearing us at the workshop and reworking that. I mean, it's super appreciative from the point of view of both a educator, as a mom, a school board member, that there's been a lot of focus to detail of what's age appropriate, but also what we need as a district and what our kids' needs are. So I really appreciate all that.
Thank you. I did forget one thing. On the consent piece, we did add consent in 8th grade. There's a few state statutes that we added in per like DPI's regulatory state statutes of what needs to go in health application. So there are state statutes that are included, that's around age of consent, felony, if it's a class C felony, class B, depending on when you're engaging in those things. So and it references all the state statute. And I forgot to mention that. I apologize.
Other questions? I just had one regarding the high school piece. You talked about the other things at DPI. We're looking, that's another. We were looking at this one first, 4th through 8th now. Are we also looking at the entire curriculum of that? Or are we just looking at adding on this, the pieces that we're missing? Like, what is the plan?
So for high school, for 10th grade health, we are looking at basically everything outside of human growth and development. We're keeping what we have there. It's scientifically accurate. That's like about 9 days in the semester. We're looking at the other 81 days in that semester. Really from our PE staff and health teachers, we're lacking in things like the mental health supports and AODA and vaping, not on the human growth and development side.
So the human growth and development pieces are up to date as far as terminology and
Yes.
that sort of thing. When's the last time that was updated?
I don't know off the top of my head. That would be like probably prior to me coming up here, maybe. I can check on that and
Okay.
we can get back to it.
Right. So that's the only thing that, if we're looking at one, it might be an opportunity to,
Sure.
if it's only 9 days, you're doing 81.
Sure.
Like, just to ensure that the things that we have in there are up to date as far as the terminology, as far as, what the best practices are, so forth and so on from the, professional organizations in the country that would provide us the same thing you did for this one. So that's the only thing I would say, if it hasn't been within the last, 5 years or so.
But the focus for this with you all was 4th through 8th grade. So we knew that question though would come, as we've also been exploring the need for our students to have learning around vaping and more access around wellness and mental health support. So that is noted.
So
go ahead.
I was gonna say, so in our proposed timeline, I've already been working with communications where we'll have this updated up on the website. A letter will go out to all families specific to each grade level, directing them to the website where they can preview the slideshows. They can preview any videos that are already in there. So that's where the April 11th piece comes out. And then so families will get that district communication. And then we already have a communication laid out that schools will send out probably next week or the week after, identifying, your child is going to be going through programming on April 27th and April 28th. And then here are, topics. Here's where you can preview everything.
Mr. Barnes, did you have something?
Yeah. I'd like to echo the sentiments of thanks for putting in all the extra work that you did in adjustments and building on what you were hearing feedback. So I really appreciate that. I think one of the things, just as a piece moving forward, and I think partly what maybe frustrating for me for this piece is even our preamble here, we're talking about having something scaffolded. The MPS has K-8 human growth and development. They have lessons that go through that. And so the piece that they look at there is comprehensive. And I think that that's something that we really need to focus on. And I think scaffolding can start in kindergarten. And what they talk about in even their program is that a lot of it is about communication and about just body awareness and other things. It's not the graphic piece or morality-based piece of anything. It's knowledge, but they start in kindergarten. And I don't see why, when we're losing so many students to open enrollment out to that district, that we can't also provide the same comprehensive education that they do. So I would look at that as something in the future, that we look at moving past just fourth grade, and we look at adding third and second, and we look past just having well, we need to make 30 minutes. We want this to be something that's viable for the students. We want this to be something that's valuable for them. And, if we're just checking boxes for time, I don't know that that necessarily does it. So I really appreciate looking forward, expanding what we're doing.
And I'll also add that through our social emotional learning curriculum, a lot of those skills are taught starting in kinder. So around like healthy relationships, around communication and collaboration. And so I would have to look more into what MPS in particular provides, but I would say we do have kind of a gradual release with the SEL programming and ensuring that our SEL programming is also happening in the classroom on a consistent basis, embedded in the daily experience for students. So we can definitely look into that, but I do think we are providing some level of scaffolding and skill building to prepare students for that conversation.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I just think that we can do more.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. Yeah, anything to support students.
And two, if a lot of that is in the social emotional piece, I also don't see why that can't then be included in this presentation, that we are starting it earlier so that people are aware and that it may be going through a
Yes.
different avenue,
Yeah.
because then it does show the scaffolding as well.
And it's more comprehensive than, to your point. Yeah,
Ms. Steele?
Ms. Steele.
Just very quickly, and I don't want to get off topic, and I know people have basketball games here too, to watch. But I would also like to see us, I see the topics that you're bringing into our 10th grade curriculum. Some of that stuff really needs to be introduced a lot earlier. I work in an inpatient unit with kids who have, kids coming in at 13 with addiction or I'm sorry, substance use disorders, that we're talking about addiction recovery or recovery maintenance plans and stuff. So I know we have DARE. I have feelings about DARE, but we don't have really anything from 6th to 8th grade. DARE is introduced at 5th. I think that that's something that the studies are showing that actually kids are not actually indulging in substance use as much, but we also know that the ones that they are indulging is we're seeing more overdoses. So fentanyl and things like that, and heroin and some of those harder drugs. And I think we're seeing it in kids who are a lot earlier. So I agree with Mr. Burns, and it's a whole different other topic, but looking at not just human growth and development being about always about relationships, but those hygiene aspects and things about alcohol and other drugs, and especially living in the state that we live in. I think these are lessons that we probably should be introducing to our kids sooner rather than later. So.
Thank you.
Other questions? If not, I would look for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any last minute discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? All right, I'll pass. Thank you very much for your work and for the committee's work on this.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to the next one. All right, so that ends our action items for this evening. So I look for a motion to adjourn.
Everybody but Kristen.
Ms. Kaiser will have to stay here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.